Oftentimes couples say that we don't have anything to talk about, right? We sit in the house, we can be sitting in the same room and there's no conversation. We can ride in the car and there's no conversation. And I just feel like we've grown apart. Oftentimes what I found is that there's so much unspoken stuff that people have not said, right? And they're not open and vulnerable enough to say it, or there's been a history of things, unmet expectations, hurt and disappointment. And so because there's so much unspoken stuff, no one has anything to say, because what I really need to say, it doesn't feel safe enough to say.
And welcome to another episode of Marriage Matters. This is a podcast where we talk about marriage matters because
marriage matters.
If you're watching for the very first time, my name is Glenn Coleman, and I'm joined as always by my brilliant and intelligent wife.
I like that. Hi guys, I'm Tanya Coleman. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I like brilliance and intelligence.
I'm just telling the truth.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
How goes it?
It's going good. It's going good. It's going good.
It's going good. Amen.
Yes, it is. What about for you?
It's going pretty well. It's been a good week.
Okay, cool deal. Well, we're gonna just jump into it. So before we get into the topic for the day, I just wanted to mention last week we did an episode using the question cards from Let's Get Deep, which was really great. If you didn't watch last week's episode, I would encourage you to go and watch it. So our goal is to do more of those where we just answer those questions and we found out some interesting things about each other.
Right.
So, and we told some interesting things, some interesting stories. So I would encourage you to go back and watch last week's episode. But that's our tip, trick, and tool for the week. Again, this week is Let's Get Deep. And it's just, it's a tool, it's a game, if you want to call it a board game, where you just,
opportunity to connect.
Yeah. And gives you questions to ask each other that you probably wouldn't think about. There's 3 different levels. There's the icebreaker level, the deep level, and then the deeper level. So really cool tip, trick, and tool.
TTT.
And like I said, I would encourage you to go and watch last week's episode. So that's it. So this week we want to talk about unspoken expectations. Unspoken. Okay, so why'd you say What is that about?
It's always I say always. Let me not use always. Absolutes, yes. It is often an issue in relationships that we have unspoken expectations. So I'm excited to talk about this.
Yes. And I don't know why, and maybe you can answer this question since you're a licensed therapist. But I don't know why sometimes it's hard to state expectations. And we can talk about it. So I guess it could be, and I wanted to get into this a little bit later in the podcast, but we're here now. But I think sometimes maybe when we put expectations out there, they're out there. And so now there's a chance that those expectations might not be met.
Absolutely.
Or there's a chance we may find out that maybe our relationship isn't as strong or as on good ground as we thought. And so sometimes I think we just have a tendency to keep those things to ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just thinking about all throughout our marriage, how I've thought one thing. And then when we really talked about it, it was like, oh, it wasn't that at all.
Sure.
We were totally on the different pages when it came to that issue. So I wanted to have this conversation because I think so much goes unsaid in relationships. And I wanted to help you create safe spaces to where not only you feel okay speaking or stating your expectations, but you are also creating that space for others.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So what are some, I guess, I just add, what happens in relationships when you don't, when expectations are not spoken, when expectations go unspoken? What happens from your years of experience in working with couples? What have you seen? Or even in our relationship, what have you seen?
Right. So, and I'll start here first before I even go to what I've seen. We struggle to say what it is that we really mean, that we're really feeling, that we're really thinking, from a heart place, from a intimate place, from a vulnerable place. That for me, all of that goes back to vulnerability, right? And so people often struggle with those hard conversations or saying what they really mean, because there is a sense of uncertainty. Vulnerability is scary. It's not guaranteed that you're going to give me what it is that I want or that I need or meet that expectation. And then I have to consider, well, what am I going to do if you don't? Or what does that mean? Like you said, does that mean that our relationship isn't as solid as I thought it was? Does that mean that you really don't care for me as deeply as I thought that you cared for me, or that I care for you? So it's that sense of uncertainty, and you're not sure. A lot of times that has to do more with that individual and not necessarily their partner. Not all of the time, but most of the time is that I am uncertain of how to say it. Sometimes people struggle with certain emotions, that it's easier for me to be angry with you and be frustrated with you and to argue with you rather than sit and really dive deeply into what it is that I'm feeling, if I'm hurt, if I feel disregarded, you know what I mean? If I'm disappointed, it's easier for me to go to the emotion of anger rather than dive deeply into those other emotions.
That's good.
Because what does that mean? I look vulnerable. I look weak. I look, Yeah.
And I guess that answers my question was going to be, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's easier to be angry than to be vulnerable?
Because it's scary.
And that's so counterintuitive, because you would think the anger is the scary, but it's like, no, it's just, and so that's why a lot of times when I see people in that state, I'm learning, and this doesn't happen all the time, but I'm learning the question is not why are you so angry? The question is, what are you afraid of?
What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
And when we dig deeper in that conversation in session, is getting to what happened to you. Because something happened to you long before you got with your spouse that, created this thing of self-protection and this wall that you try to portray to keep people from violating or penetrating that wall, to try to keep yourself safe and try to help you to feel less vulnerable. Even in marriage, couples do this. And what I've learned is that things like anxiety, like depression, anger can be a sign, can be a symptom of someone who feels overwhelmed, of someone who feels anxious about a situation. I don't want to go to your family house, and well, they're responding in an angry way, but they could be uncomfortable around that group of people and they don't know how to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that I feel anxious, I feel nervous, or I'm unhappy with our situation or with myself. And so I respond to you very angrily, or in this, I push you back, basically, is what I'm doing when I respond that way, instead of sitting down and just being really open and vulnerable that, I've never felt comfortable being around your dad, or, your aunt said some really mean and ugly things to me the last time we were at a family gathering, and it's taken me a really long time, to get over that. And instead of really sitting down and having those conversations, we just tend to try to cover it up. And there could be an issue in the relationship that we need to address, or it could be an issue that I need to address. Maybe my partner isn't open. My husband may not be open to me sharing those types of things. Maybe he gets very defensive, or the wife gets very defensive when I say those types of things, and, thinks that I'm being accusatory, instead of that I'm just being open and honest and vulnerable with you about my experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll say this, when it comes to expectations and voicing those, and like, whatever your reason is why you don't voice those, maybe in the past no one has ever, when you've stated expectations, no one has ever met those for you or been there for you. But I guess one point that I want to really drill home today, that we have to come to the realization, and we know this, but I think we don't acknowledge it enough, is that we are different.
Absolutely.
And that we're not going to agree on everything, or we both have different ways of doing things. And here's the point that I want to drill home even more than that, is that it's okay. It's okay. As a matter of fact, it's expected, right? So what putting your expectations out on the table, what stating your expectations do, is it puts it in a conversation, and now you want to talk about communication. It makes you really communicate, right? And there are going to be some expectations for you and your spouse that some of them are going to be non-negotiables, that in order for us to be in this relationship. Right. And this is the type of stuff, this is why I believe premarital counseling is so important, because this is the type of stuff that we bring out in premarital. I heard friend of the podcast, Tim Ross.
Come on, speak it.
But I heard him say something the other day I was like, wow. He said, what you know is what gets you to the altar. In other words, what you know about a person is what gets you to the point to where now you're engaged, now you're about to be married. But he said, at the altar, you're not saying I do to what you know. You're saying I do to what you don't know. Absolutely. You're saying for better or for worse for what you don't know. You're saying for better or for worse, sickness and health, all these things, for stuff that you're saying this to your partner that they may not even know. Correct. Because you don't know. I know we got married really young, and I know I didn't know everything about myself. I didn't know. I thought I did at the time, but I didn't know. Right. And so, where was I going? It's okay though. And it's okay that we always said our goal is not to think alike, but to think together.
To think together.
So I think for me, that is what really took the pressure off really speaking what I really thought about a situation. And understanding, because first of all, that it's okay for me to think differently from you. But also for Tanya, and this goes vice versa. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But for her understanding that just because I don't think like her doesn't mean I'm automatically saying that her way is wrong. It's wrong,
absolutely.
Or that my way is better. It's just saying that my way is different.
It's different. And we've said this a million different ways on the podcast, is that, when we come together as a married couple, you're going to have your way. I'm going to have my way. But the goal is for us to create our way together. You know what I mean? And sometimes that may look like we take my direction. Sometimes that may look like we take your direction. And sometimes that may look like we just come up with something new altogether that works for us, you know. But, to your point about, that we don't have to think alike as long as we're thinking together, is realizing that, hey, I don't want you to be like me. You know what I mean? Like, do you really want to be married to yourself?
Well, That's another podcast.
Right.
Because
it is another podcast. Some people do. Some people think that, if everybody were just like me, then everything would be okay. But really, I need what you bring to my life.
Yeah.
It adds to who I am. What I bring to your life, it adds to who you are, and that's what we should be doing as partners, as teams, that we're adding to one another's lives. I don't want a duplicate of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I know I have moments, and I don't know if we might not get along like that.
So I guess to drive that point home is that, number one, it's okay to think differently. Mm-hmm. That's okay. Mm-hmm. And when the other person is voicing their opinion or the way they would normally do it, I have to realize that that's not saying that my way is not good. Correct. Or my way is wrong. Now, let me level set here. I'm not talking about someone who's always overcorrecting, or every time you do something, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and it's like you're being very critical. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
I'm talking about
these narcissistic personalities,
right,
that tend to.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. So when it comes to this, understanding that it's okay that we think differently, and number two, just because someone thinks different than me doesn't mean that they think I'm wrong, or that I am wrong, or they're right, or it's just we're different, And so that's why I think that we have to, when it comes to relationships, and this is just not spouse, this is co-workers, this is parent to child, friends. You have to set expectations, and these are the things that, and sometimes those things go unsaid. We just know, but I don't like. I'm coming to the place in my life where I don't like assuming.
No, we have to be clear. I think we need to talk about all of the things.
Yes.
If you're wondering it, you probably need to bring it to the table.
Yeah.
If it's important to you, you probably need to bring it to the table.
And don't minimize things. Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Don't
minimize.
Minimize. Thank you. Don't minimize things. Because like Tanya said, if it keeps coming up, it's probably important. Mm-hmm. And so, but don't assume, don't assume that, whenever you get married and you manage your family, manage money one way, and your spouse's family manage money one way. Don't just assume that you're going to manage the money your way, or
right, that you're going to adopt your way of doing
raise
things.
The kids your way. Right. Don't assume. You need to have those conversations. I'm thinking of a friend of ours who, they were struggling, they were needing help around the house, and they just couldn't figure out how to do it all. And Tanya made the suggestion, why don't you ask your husband for help? And they were like, you know what? I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think I don't even think I could do that.
And that's an unspoken expectation, because in a lot of women's minds, whether they stay home or they work, they have this unspoken expectation that it's my job to do everything. And he should be able to come home from work and sit down on the sofa and put his feet up and eat his food and watch TV and not jump in and help out with the household task or with the kids. That's one of those unspoken expectations that is just kind of built into many women's minds, and men. Yeah, because a lot of men expect for their wives, even though she's working, to still come home and do all of the things. And then they wonder why she tired and mad.
Yeah. And then, I'm not going to go. I was going to go somewhere else with it, but that's
I know where you was going to go.
But anyway, so so everything, don't assume anything. Put everything out on the table. I'm just reading my notes here. Put it on the table. Remember, but when you're putting it out on the table, remember how your spouse receives the information. So in that example I gave with help around the house, it's not the conversation that shouldn't go, I feel like I do everything around here. And blah, 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 blah. That's good. The person that's not going to get you. But
they're shut down.
Yeah. So I say going more like, hey, listen, I got it. There's a lot that I got to do, and I'm working, and I got to take care of the kids, and I got to do the laundry, and I got to do the floors, and I got to make sure the dog's taken care of, and so I just really feel overwhelmed. I just really feel like if something doesn't break or give, I'm gonna break. So here's what I would like to see you help out in this A, B, and C. Is that something that you think that you could do? So that's how that conversation should go. So, but again, it's having those conversations, and don't leave anything up to, a lot of people say, well, we'll get it. It'll figure it out. No. So we know we have a plan. And again, we're not saying that we got it all figured out, but
that the plan is foolproof. Right. We have a plan and we know how to pivot and to adjust when we need to.
Right. And a great example is like I take out the garbage. That's what I do that. But there's been times where the garbage is overflowing, and so Tanya will take it out, or she'll take out the bag and put it in the garage, and when I come home, I'll just pick it up and put it. But my point is, we have discussed that and said, you're gonna take out the garbage. So that's an expectation. Tanya does the cooking. And again, I didn't come into the relationship assuming that, right? We had that discussion. You're going to take care of the food. And there came a point in our marriage where it was decided that I'm going to take care of the groceries. So there was all these things. I was listening to another podcast, and the wife was saying that she wanted the husband to put gas in her car. And she's always running out. I'm not going to say who it is, but she's always running out of gas. And he's like, why don't you just put gas in your car? And she's like, well, I didn't grow up that way. My dad always put gas in our vehicles. And he's like, well, I'm not doing that. But my point is, before this, they never had that conversation. So she was expecting him to do something, and he didn't.
He had no idea.
He had no idea.
And he had no desire to do it.
And he had no desire.
And maybe if they had talked about it beforehand, and she said, I grew up with my dad always making sure that there were gas in the vehicles, and that's an expectation of mine because that's something I don't like doing for whatever reason. Do you think you can take that task on? It's an approach. Sometimes it's about the approach, sure. And he may have been more open to that idea, or just said to her, I don't like putting gas in the car either. So it might be a good idea that you take care of that yourself.
And that's a great example, I think, of one of those things that, like I said earlier, there are non-negotiables. There's some things that are like, you're on the fence. It's like, it could go either way from it. Then there's other things just like, that really don't matter. I think gas is one of those things. And we're just trying to give you some really practical things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's one of those things for us where you say, I don't like doing it, but I'll do it. So I know that. So I know you're not expecting me to always have your car filled up. But I know that when I'm in your car and I see it's at a quarter of a tank, I'm going to go fill it up because I know you don't like doing that. And because you voiced that expectation to me. And for you, I know it's not like one of those things where you got to do this. Right. Or else, you know what I'm saying?
It's just something that I don't necessarily enjoy doing. And I really feel cared for when you do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just feels good as a wife that, that's one of the ways that my husband takes care of me is he makes sure that there's gas in my car. And when that's not an option, when I'm about to be on E and I need to stop, I just need to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of these things are really important even before the relationship, even, or before you get married. But if you haven't had these conversations, and I know we're just talking about a lot of surface things, but there are other things that are deeper. Go ahead.
Right. And so I want to say this about that as you're going there. So oftentimes couples say that we don't have anything to talk about, right? We sit in the house. We can be sitting in the same room and there's no conversation. We can ride in the car and there's no conversation. And I just feel like we've grown apart. Oftentimes what I found is that there's so much unspoken stuff that people have not said, right? And they're not open and vulnerable enough to say it, or there's been a history of things, unmet expectations, hurt and disappointment. And so because there's so much unspoken stuff, no one has anything to say, because what I really need to say, it doesn't feel safe enough to say.
That is so deep.
It is. And we have to, so having these, what you say, these surface level conversations, it builds the habit.
It's like a gateway.
It's a gateway to discussing some of the deeper things that we need to talk about.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. That is so good. That's so good. I forgot what I was about to say.
I'm sorry.
No, that was good. It's like you saying that you don't have nothing to say, but you got all the things to say.
You have because you're saying it to somebody, to your friends, right? You know, you're having these conversations and complaining about him or her, but you're not saying it to the person that needs to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, man, why are we so quick to complain about our spouse or anybody to someone else, but we won't? Even the Bible says that. It said, if you have an ought with your brother or your sister, and this is just not my wife, this is my sister in Christ.
Exactly.
You go to that person, right? But I know a person, like for me, because I perceive that as conflict, and I don't like conflict. Sometimes it's hard for me to do that. But I think I've gotten better.
Oh, you've definitely gotten better
over the years. So so yeah, make sure that it's all out. Start with and you can start with the surface things. But like I said, if it's like, even with our kids, it dawned on me, like, you know, and it's not the case now. Sometimes but anyway. Like you were talking about them cleaning the kitchen, and you were like, why don't they ever clean the countertops when it's their night to clean the kitchen? And it dawned on me, it's like, have you ever taught them?
Absolutely.
I know, I'm just saying. But those are the things that, you know, sometimes we don't, we're expecting people to do things, and you're like, have you ever showed? They just don't know. So So my point is set the expectations. And I always say this, it's impossible to hit a target when you don't even know what the target is.
Exactly. And I love that you made that point with the kids, because, you know, we talk about relationships, but I see that in parenting a lot, that you're expecting your kids to do certain things in a certain way. But if you haven't shown them, if you haven't gotten in that bathroom on your hands and knees with them and shown them how to clean the tub, you know, or scrub the toilet, then how are they supposed to know? I mean, they're not going to get it via osmosis. Like, you have to go in and teach them and teach them more than one time. Yeah. You know,
because we don't come here knowing how to do.
Nope.
We have to learn.
We don't come here knowing how to do. That's good.
And that is even in relationships. Sometimes you don't get married. This is good. You don't get married knowing how to love that person.
Oh, well.
Because no other relationship, what you have, has never existed before.
Correct.
There are no books. There are no manuals. There are no guides. Even though you've been married before, now the person you're with, that relationship has never existed before. And even in that relationship where you are right now in life has never existed before.
Right.
This moment has never existed. So it's like,
before.
That's why you constantly have to be, and I'm not saying like you always having these meetings about expectations. No, that's not what I'm saying. Right. But as things change, you have to
stay updated. It's just like you do with these devices. Exactly. And when they say there's an update available, you need to update it or you're going to have issues with this phone.
Yes. So you have to do that. So why don't we, or what hinders us? I just wrote these out, so I don't even know what that is, but I know what I'm trying to say. What hindered me from stating my expectations? So I'm just going to go through some things and just talk about, I guess, what hindered me and how I overcame that. And I'm just giving you these examples. This is me. Take what you will take out. How they say, take the meat, spit out the bones. So one of the things for me was pride. And I didn't realize it was pride, but it was. Or pride, maybe even ego. It's like, and especially when it was like, I almost perceived it like, I don't need your help, you know, or, you know, so I perceived it as like maybe as a sign of weakness, or I didn't want to seem like I couldn't handle your lack of loving me. And not that you got what I'm saying by that? Not that you wasn't loving me, but you wasn't maybe loving me the way that I needed to be loved.
And so you weren't communicating.
Yeah, and so I didn't want to come out and say, I thought if I said you're not loving me right, that sounded very, you know,
weak.
I wasn't being a man.
And it's not weakness at all.
Right. And so that's how I overcame that when I realized that vulnerability and being honest and open, that is true. That's courage.
That is courage.
Because like you said, the easy thing to do is be mad and go complain about you to my boys. That's the easy part. That's the weak part. That's I had another term that came to my mind. I'm not going to say it. But that's the sucker part. I'm just saying it like that. That's the sucker part is you just gonna go play. You're gonna go complain about your wife to someone else instead of being a man and going to your wife, or being a man taking your wife to a counselor or a therapist that can help you work through your problems. And that's why I think a lot of times men don't want to go to therapy because we're just afraid to really deal with. You know, I can remember when I did the first growth challenge. With the kitchen table. Shout out to our people, Mark and Melissa Dunwa. Shout out to them. And we did the growth challenge weekend, and I did it by myself the first one. And I told her, I was like, I don't want you to come. Because I said, the problem is me. I'm the problem. I knew, and I just can't have you there. I got to go do this alone. And, but we eventually started doing, we did 2 and 3 together. But my point is the pride, the ego, all of those things was keeping me from really being open, honest, and vulnerable. The other thing I think for me was sometimes I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed at what I really wanted. Yeah. It's like, I want to be held too, you know.
Like spoon me.
Yes, I want to be the little spoon, you know.
Right.
But sometimes those expectations are whatever. Sometimes they're just you think, oh my God, I can't believe I'm thinking this. Well, it's in there, so let's get it on the table. And if something's wrong with that, then we could address it and deal it and get help or whatever. But I think for me and I guess what really, and this kind of ties into the next point, is so embarrassed. I actually got 2 more points. I was embarrassed. The other one was I didn't want to appear as if that what you didn't, like, I'm a nonchalant person. That's just, that don't bother me. You can't shake me. I just, that don't bother me.
That's so weird.
But it's like
in your relationship.
On the inside, I was just like,
I'm not saying you're weird, but I'm just saying
I was like this.
Yeah.
But and the other one was, and I always talk about this, keep the peace. I just wanted to keep the peace. Right. Yeah. So those were the things for me. And I had to realize that do I want a good marriage or do I want to appear? And, for me, authenticity is very important. And it's really important for me to live the way I say I live. And I got to the place where I didn't want to just put on for other people and go home and not be happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Or be one way in here and then can't be that way with my wife.
Yeah.
And, I said this the last time I had the opportunity to teach at some of our friends' church. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy who's up in the pulpit teaching and my wife can't even look at me because everything that I'm saying It's like, oh, he say that here, but he lying. He ain't really like that. And I think one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten was from a young man. And he was over here at the house, actually, and he's like, you really like this. You know, he's like, you really like you are, you know, like when you're teaching, because I was clowning, because, you know, I say some kind of crazy stuff sometimes. But he's like, you really like that. And that was like, wow. Yeah. I really appreciate that. So go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was saying I said it's so weird, but it's weird to hear you reflecting on that now because of how far we've come. You know what I mean? I mean, I know it's not perfect and we're not making 100% on everything all the time, but we've come a really long way. And I know that authenticity piece for you, you really did a lot of work around that within yourself, you know, to push through some of those barriers. And that vulnerability and openness for me, it gave me so much peace, joy, hope, and permission to also be that open and vulnerable with you as well. You know what I'm saying? Because we can withhold in our relationships for fear of, if I open this up with him, you know, is he going to judge me? Is he going to feel differently about me? You know, but you being a man and being willing to open up that much and to do that kind of work really made our marriage even more safe for me to open up. You know what I mean? And I feel like it has been these, you know, last 3 to 5 years, it has been phenomenal, the growth and the change that we've experienced together as a couple and the connection, you know, that we have now versus when we married, you know, almost 22 years ago.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this. Here's what I've learned is that whenever I'm the version of me that I think people need me to be, they're not loving me anyway. Yeah. When I have to be someone else for people to love me, they're not loving me. They're loving the version of me that I am presenting to them. That's
doing that they want. That's doing them a favor.
So you're still not being seen, heard, and valued. Because that's not you.
So good.
And I'm to the place in my life that I don't have, life is too short.
Life is too
to live life like that. So I'm going to be me. And here's the other thing that I've come to realize. I'm not for everybody. And there are going to be some people that just don't like me, just for no apparent reason. But you know what? Guess what?
It's okay.
It's okay. We don't have to be for everybody. As long as the two most important relationships in my life is the relationship I have with my Father, my Heavenly Father, which there's nothing that I can do to, I mean, he said, if you make your bed in hell, I'm with you. There's nothing that I can do to break that. And the second one is my wife. And as long as those two relationships are straight, that I'm sorry, but I just don't care. You know, I mean, I want to be right, but and I guess maybe I come to find I don't want to be. You know, this is like, I say I don't want to. I don't have to be.
Right.
I say
right.
So, yeah, you got anything else to
that
add?
Was good,
so there is, and I want to look the scripture up, but I forgot to do it. But I think it's 2 Corinthians 6, verse 9, somewhere in there. But it says this, that no man knows what's in the mind of a man except for the spirit of that man.
That man.
And it's using man it's not a gender term. It's just, you know. So what I want to close with that because of this. People are not going to know what your expectations are unless you know, I remember I was talking to a friend of mine. Actually, we were doing some coaching together. And I was telling him I wanted to do X, B, and A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, did you tell them that? And I was like, no, I didn't tell them. He's like, well, and I was upset because these people maybe had passed over me. I forgot what it was. But he's like, well, how are you expecting them to know you want to do that when you never told them you want to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and I think we do that a lot of times in our relationship.
Right.
We get upset.
We make an assumption that you should know.
Yeah, and I'm telling you that your wife don't know. Your husband does not know. And so if you want him to bring you flowers, tell him, look, I want you to bring me flowers. Send him a text message. Hey, can you bring me flowers home today? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Or surprise me this week with flowers, please. I need some flowers this week.
Yeah. So, and I don't want to get into all that because we've talked about that before, but you've got to make your expectations known.
Absolutely.
And again, it's not demanding. I'm not giving you an ultimatum, but I'm just saying here's some things that I would really like to see happen in our relationship.
Yep. That's good. That's perfect.
Yep.
Perfectly said.
All right. That's it. So. Always remember you can follow us on the three social media platforms that we are on: Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All the three of them are at Marriage Matters 0526. You can, if you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook or on Instagram, you can also listen to this on Apple podcasts as well as Spotify. And also Anchor and pretty much anywhere podcasts are found, you can find us. If you're listening to this, you can watch it on any of those platforms. I also want to remind you that we are open for business.
Yes.
Whole Life Solutions, and kind of talk to them about like what are your specialty, your niche, your ideal client. Now we're not limited to this, but this is where you.
So my ideal client really is women who are in life transitions, or they feel the need to transition. Women who may be struggling with, anxiety, depression, maybe empty nesters, grief, any of those, because all of those things, when I say transition, these are changes that are happening in life or changes that you feel you need to make happen and you need some guidance through that. That's kind of my specialty and my niche. I do work with men also. I do have some, male clients and we work around some of those same things. So that's pretty, pretty much what we do. I think, it doesn't matter how old you are. You're going to be, there's a change that's happening in your life, or there's something that life hit you with that's causing you to make some changes or transitions. And so I like to walk people through that. We deal with the anxieties that those transitions cause, or that you've been struggling with your whole life, or, depression and all of those different things is where I center a lot of my work and what a lot of my clients are experiencing. And so I use a pretty eclectic kind of counseling style with clients, cognitive behavioral therapy, solution focus. It depends on what the clients need, is what kind of pulls or happens in the room. So
okay, and I also do coaching with Tanya alone. We coach couples together as well as there's some.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but I do work with couples individually because some people have that need for, they want a licensed counselor or they want something that maybe we don't do together. So I want to say that too. But yes, we absolutely do work with couples together. And
but you can reach out to us at wholelifecoachingandcounseling.com book your first 15-minute consultation. And that's free of charge. And
you can get all of your questions answered in that 15-minute consultation. So if you have questions about the services we offer, or you kind of want to throw out there, this is what's happening in my life, is this something you can help me with? We kind of hash that out in that first 15 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, holdoncoachingandcounseling.com. Come and hang out with us. Thank you as always for liking, following, sharing, listening, viewing, commenting, all of the things. We so appreciate it. And yeah, that's all we got for you this week. So always remember, this is Glenn and Tanya Coleman reminding you that
your marriage matters.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.